Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the reading of the fic Complicated Creation. Here's the summary. Midoriya Izuku is medically quirkless, not technically homeless, perpetually exhausted, and doing his damn best despite it all. He also sees spirits, which might be cool if not for the fact that A, no one else does, B, they really don't like him very much, and C, he's pretty sure the heroes now think he's a villain working for the League. Aizawa Shota just wants to take down Overhaul, rescue Eri, keep his students alive, get some rest, and find out how this Deku kid knows things he absolutely should not know about his personal life and the Shie Hassaikai case. Unless Nighteye's right, and the kid really is a villain. This fic is just over 110,000 words with 13 chapters. Here's Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Contractual Obligations. There is the scrabbling of claws against the wards again. Izuku resists the urge to scream, but only just. Sleep is already difficult as it is in the noisy doya. His neighbors are polite enough, sure, but the paper-thin walls do nothing to dampen the sound of people moving around, doors sliding open and closed, or the smell of stale cigarettes and cheap beer. The last thing he needs is a spirit demanding attention at. He glares at the clock. 1 a.m. The thing outside his window mewls in pain as it slams against the ward a third time, and Izuku knows, just knows, that he's never going to get to sleep as long as it wants him for something. Sometimes he wonders why he even bothers, really, with building the wards. They keep things out, but they never actually leave him alone. Stop crying, he mutters loud enough for the spirit to hear, as he pushes himself off the futon and reaches out to break the wards. What do you want? It wastes no time, tumbling into the tiny room and then throwing itself at Izuku, multiple clawed limbs catching on clothing and skin. Only the fact that it clearly isn't trying to do harm keeps Izuku from blasting it back, and even then, only barely. He's been hurt far too often to trust these things outright. Help me, help us, help us, help us, help us! Calm down! His head instantly aches from the onslaught of half-thoughts and feelings, none of them actually useful. Spirits could be like that when they were upset. They just thought too fast for a human mind to keep up with, and Izuku ends up hearing gibberish. He takes a breath while the thing in his arms flails impotently. Calm down, he says again, this time directly. The spirit shudders and seems to compose itself, at least enough to stop shifting. It had arrived as a mass of tentacles and claws and beaks and feathers, amorphous and undefined. It settles eventually into something like an octopus if you ignore the fact that it has too many eyes and arms and it never quite stops undulating. I need your help. Long limbs wrap worryingly around him as Izuku holds the spirit. At least it doesn't seem to have active suckers. He didn't want to have to deal with that as well. They hurt my human and cut us apart. They shot him and now he can't use my power. Izuku frowns. The spirits around here come to ask him for help with their humans on occasion, but most of them know he's pretty limited to what he can do. He tried the vigilante thing, and it hadn't exactly gone well. And the first aid he could do was pretty limited. Still, if someone was shot, the spirit clinging to him doesn't seem to be so young that it wouldn't understand if its human died. So, if he isn't using his quirk, there's a few possible explanations. Is he unconscious, or just badly hurt? They took his quirk, you stupid. The spirit seems to realize insulting Izuku isn't going to add to his request for help, and it changes its tone to something vaguely more polite. They shot him, with a bullet. The other humans said it erased his quirk even after they healed him. I can't connect to him now. He's alive and awake, and the humans are useless. I need you to do something. Izuku looks at the clock again. It's a little after 1 in the morning, and the trains won't be running until 5. Spirits never seem to care about pesky human constructs like time or distance. Still, it isn't someone bleeding out in an alleyway, which Izuku has been called out to help with and is always horrifying, so he doesn't need to just jump up and go. Let's start at the beginning. He shifts the creature from his arms to his shoulder, so his hands are free, then raids the tiny fridge in his room for a bottle of water, refilled from the tap, and a kombini onigiri from yesterday. What do I call you? He keeps the question simple and non-pressing and waits. They always hesitate, even though he never asks for a name. He knows better. Oku, it finally offers. It's almost insulting how bland it is. like it thinks he's a threat while it's wrapped around his arm, and demanding he drop everything and help. Oku works. Izuku doesn't press for more. All he needs is something to call him. So where is your human? Give me distance in real terms. I need to know if I can walk or if we're going to have to wait for the trains. Not far. It would be instant if you... Not happening. That was for emergencies, and this sure as fuck wasn't it. Define not far, because I once had a river spirit think a 3-day walk wasn't far. He has walked from his home to a place near here, Oku says, after a moment of thought. He did not need to rest between. If only they could be bothered to learn some sense of measurement or time, Izuku thinks, and not for the first or last time. All right. I need some details. Who is he? Instead of a reply, it pecks him on the ear with a beak sharp enough to draw blood and squawks. Izuku responds in kind, throwing the spirit off of him and through the wall, which it passes through unharmed, cursing and then biting his tongue because it's fucking 1 a.m. and everyone is trying to sleep, and if he gets kicked out for disturbing the others, he'll be out a week's rent. What was that for? He hisses, digging out his first aid kit for some gauze because his ear is now bleeding freely. Humans are human. There's a hell of a big difference between trying to help some young gangster on a street corner and a doctor who lived in a building with a concierge that would take one look at Izuku and call the cops. The creature hisses back at him from the floor. All the too many arms, legs, appendages, grouped together to narrow at the base, so that it looks like a balloon covered in eyes. Still creepy, but nowhere near the worst thing he's ever seen. Izuku can't tell if it's just a defensive position or if he's trying to intimidate him. You asked for his name. No, I didn't. Maybe this was a younger spirit. If it didn't understand the distinction, most of them at least understood this. I asked who he is. Never mind that humans don't follow the same rules, and I know hundreds of human names that don't mean shit. I'm not doing anything until I know who I'm dealing with. Oku seems to think this over. It had been bouncing up and down slowly as it ignores gravity to rise upwards until it stops at eye level. His hero name is Sun Eater. Well, shit, Izuku thinks to himself, already reaching for a change of clothes and his hoodie. It's a hero. Someone, some villain, if the spirit is right about the bullets being responsible, took out a hero's power by severing their connection to their spirit. That's never happened before. At least he's never heard of it. Quirk suppressants and erasure quirks could mess up the connection, sure, but they never made a spirit find Izuku and demand he fix it. Spirits try to ignore him, unless they want something from him, or want to try to do something to him. And they also only deal with him when they don't have an alternative. Whatever this is, Oku thinks it isn't going to be fixed by regular medicine or someone's quirk. Never mind that Sun Eater is a third-year student, the part of Izuku's brain that still obsesses over heroes' supplies. Everyone is doing internships right now. He's seen heroes and students patrolling together in various areas over the week. And oh god. The rest of his brain catches up and slams into the bit of him that still has too much sympathy. He might think he's quirkless. That twist in his gut, gnawing at the lone rice ball and threatening panic if he doesn't breathe. Are you sure I can fix this? He asks, even as he picks up his shoes from the corner. He can't afford to leave them at the door. His last pair were stolen. And slides his backpack over one shoulder. You're the bridge, the spirit offers, almost grudging, in the title. I'll take that as a yes, Izuku quips dryly as he locks the sliding door and heads quietly down the narrow hall. You lot only ever call me that when you really need a favor. And what will this cost me? Oku's voice has echoes to it, Izuku thinks as he changes out of the slippers into his red trainers. There are levels. Worry mixed with a begrudging respect, impatience, and the quiet, thorough line of fear. Izuku doesn't call him on it. He considers what he knows of Sun Eater from the UA Sports Festival while Oku floats beside him as he walks down the alley to the main street. For payment, you'll owe me a favor. Your power lets Sun Eater manifest various animal body parts, right? What are the limitations of that? Why do you need to know? More suspicion, once again. Because what I usually trade in is power. I do this for you, and I can call on you to help me, usually by you channeling power through me for a specific job I need to do. So I need to know what sort of quirk that ends up being. They're both quiet as they continue, Izuku letting Oku lead as they make their way out Kotobukicho and heading northwest. The gambling dens are still busy here, and Izuku doesn't meet anyone's eye as they past track-suited yakuza and the various old men who spend their nightly rate on alcohol instead of a roof over their head. The area's shit, and Izuku does what he can, but he's never much better. All of them are a bad day or week from being homeless. No one bothers him here. A weird kid who talks to himself and wanders around at all hours of the night fits right in, after all. They turn away from the narrow, overcrowded streets and walk past the convenience stores Izuku buys most of his meals from when Oku breaks his silence. He must eat the animal he wishes to become. It has to be close to eating it to work. It stops when he digests it. Every word sounds like it pains the spirit to say, as though it's worried Izuku would use it against Sun Eater. Maybe he'd understand that and feel sympathy for him if Izuku had any history whatsoever of using what he knew against heroes or against humans at all. Instead, it just stings, but that's normal for dealing with spirits. Hurt feelings are the best he can hope for, really. All right. He switches to projecting the inside voice where the spirits can hear him, and no one else can. It's good for being quiet, obviously, but it's also the way they make contracts. If this works, he lines the words with power, intent, honesty, clarity. You will owe me 3 uses of your power. I can call on it any time, and you must provide. If this doesn't work, you will owe me 1 use of your power for dragging me out of bed and who knows how far from home on this. I will agree, so long as that use of power isn't turned against my human, Oku returns warily. It might be, if he's a hero and tries to attack me or thinks I'm involved with this after I help him, Izuku points out wryly. Or he might just be the sort of hero who'd want to help the clearly deranged miner appearing on his doorstep. If it does come to that, it will be to get me away from him and not to hurt him. The spirit considers as they walk. It doesn't take too long. Then I, Oku, guardian of the Yahagi River, agree to your terms. There is power in his words, Izuku can feel it, and it might not be the spirit's true name, but it does have to be able to make a contract binding. And I, Deku, will adhere to our agreement to assist you and your human to the best of my ability, Izuku returns, knowing the spirit can feel the power in his words as the contract tightens around them both. 1 more leash, 1 more tether, to join the multitude Izuku carries. He's Deku in contracts. He's Deku everywhere now, except in his own head. He has to be. He hasn't had a name in years. The apartment complex is a mid-rise and nothing special after walking for just over an hour to get there. It feels weird to know a hero, well, hero in training, lives here, but maybe that's what makes it a good place to live. Some heroes don't really separate their private and personal lives, while others strive to do so. It's never meant anything much to Izuku, of course. Spirits tend to stay around their chosen human. And Izuku can always recognize ones he's seen before. Which apartment is his? Izuku asks as they approach the building. Oku floats up ahead, and then continues to rise before disappearing into a unit on the 3rd floor. You're doing that on purpose and it isn't funny, Izuku tells him, but the spirit ignores him and leaves him to figure out his options. The building is tucked between 2 others, one looking like an office space, the other probably also residential. No balconies, just row after row of windows, many with AC units hanging out of one side. The front door requires a key or a buzzer code, neither of which Izuku has. Buzzing up isn't going to work if he doesn't know what the unit is, never mind. Hi, I'm here to restore your quirk your octopus spirit asked me to. Isn't likely to get him access. He circles the building, annoyed at Oku for abandoning him, probably as some sort of test, hazing, regretting his agreement even though it had come to him. But the back door is at least more useful. It's got an old-style lock, and while he's sure there's cameras around, Izuku keeps his hoodie pulled up, and the back door isn't nearly as well lit as the main entrance. His lock picks come out from his backpack, and it takes a little more than a minute to ease the door open from there. He takes the stairs up to the 3rd floor and then just searches for Oku. He can feel the starbursts of power of other spirits. There are more than 30 in the building at first look. But Oku is distinct, now that they have a contract, and waiting in an apartment without any other. Which doesn't mean Sun Eater is alone. There could be someone quirkless in there, but it's not likely. God does Izuku know how unlikely it is. The light had been on when Oku had floated into the window. He hopes Sun Eater is awake, though he doesn't know if anyone would be able to sleep at all if they thought their quirk was gone. He knocks and waits, shifting from foot to foot. There's the sound of movement in the apartment, and then a hesitation he can almost feel as he's examined through the peephole. The door opens an inch. The face that peers out at him looks bruised and pale, eyes dark behind messy black hair, and Sun Eater's voice is so quiet it's nearly a whisper. "I think you have the wrong apartment." Izuku shakes his head, trying to sound as confident as he can. He only has one real shot at this. I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm here because your quirk got messed up. Someone asked me to come by and fix it for you." "No one told me anything." Sun Eater looks at him with narrowed eyes. "Who are you?" "You can call me Deku," Izuku offers, struggling not to stutter. It's somehow easier talking to spirits compared to humans. "I'm sorry for coming by so late, but I was only just asked by a friend of yours and it felt kind of urgent. I'm alone and I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help you get your quirk back." "Who sent you?" Sun Eater asked, still suspicious. "I don't think you know him, but he knows you. His name is Oku." It's the truth, after all. Not that he expects the name to mean anything to Sun Eater, but at least it isn't the sort of truth that gets him called crazy. The door shuts. Izuku holds his breath. He doesn't know what goes on inside Sun Eater's head, maybe. He just considers his options and thinks, what more harm can it do? No one wants to be quirkless. Plenty of people call it worse than death. Izuku's heard them. There's the sound of the latch moving, and the door opens. Sun Eater is in a black hoodie and pajama pants with UA's crest on them. He doesn't meet Izuku's eyes. "If this is a trick..." "It isn't," Izuku promises, his voice quiet to match Sun Eater's low tone. "It'd be a pretty shitty one when you're already hurt." "I'm not hurt. It's just my quirk." He holds the door open and steps back. Sensing it's the best he's going to get in terms of a welcome, Izuku steps in and then steps out of his shoes, feeling stupidly grateful he'd put on clean socks before leaving. "Your quirk getting messed up is still going to hurt," he points out as they stand in the hallway awkwardly. "I'm sorry." Sun Eater looks at him suspiciously. "Why are you apologizing?" Izuku can't say, "Because I know what it's like," because that won't work when it's going to look like his quirk has something to do with, well, quirks. "I know someone who's quirkless, and they wouldn't wish it on anyone," he explains. "So, is it okay if we get started? I don't know how long this will take." That probably isn't promising, but Sun Eater just looks at him carefully again, eyes flickering up in surprise before returning to Izuku's feet. "What do we have to do?" "Just sit down somewhere." The apartment isn't particularly large from appearances. There's a door to the left of the hallway that Izuku expects is the bathroom. The kitchen is to the right, and straight ahead is the rest of the space, split in half by a folding screen to hide the sleeping area from the sitting space. "Could you sit on the couch?" Sun Eater shuffles along, shoulders high and hands flexing, clearly nervous. Izuku does his best to project harmless, even if he knows he sounds suspicious as hell. The other boy hesitates at the couch before sitting down, facing Izuku. Izuku kneels on the floor, keeping his motion slow and straightforward. He digs out a green Sharpie and puts the bag aside so Sun Eater doesn't think he's got anything weird hidden in it. "I have to draw on you, to start," he says with the marker in hand. "Have you done this before?" Sun Eater asks, still hunched and uncertain, but at least looking more at Izuku's face. "Not exactly," Izuku admits, because he doesn't want to give a false hope. I've helped some kids with quirk problems before, and there was an old man who, well, I've done things like this, so I think I can do this. I know I can't make it worse, and if I can make it better, I want to." Sun Eater seems to take that at face value because he doesn't comment on the slip. Izuku really doesn't want to try to explain who they are. He nods instead. "What do I have to do?" "Just stay still, mostly. I'll be meditating, so I won't really hear you if you say anything." Izuku pauses and ducks his own head. "So, please don't knock me out and call the cops on a weirdo dropping by at 2 a.m. "Closer to 3. Sun Eater almost seems to smile for a brief second. "All right." "Great." With genuine relief, Izuku uncaps the marker. "I just need your hand." Sun Eater offers his left, and Izuku carefully adds the simple strokes of a connection sigil. Sun Eater examines it curiously, and Izuku knows he can't read it. Humans can't. even if he can't really see it, not with his eyes. That's magic for you. He makes the complimentary sigil on his own left hand and settles back on his heels. So just don't move around too much, he offers with a lopsided smile, and then closes his eyes and reaches for Sun Eater's power, which feels like embers of a once bright flame under the roar of an ocean. He can do this. He will do this. Then what happened? Fat Gum asks, leaning forward in his seat. It's awful. Everyone's staring at him, and Tamaki's hands are on his knees and bruising them in his grip, which is the only real distraction he has against just crawling under the table and hiding. Nighteye and Eraserhead are both looking at him intently, and even Tsukauchi is in the room for the debrief, and Kirishima is here, and if he doesn't show the other student how to properly give a report, what kind of example is he even being, and... Breathe, Eraserhead tells him calmly. We just want to know everything you remember. Take another breath and then tell us what you can, and we'll go over the details once we know everything. Right. Tamaki breathes and wishes Mirio were here instead of interning with Mirko, just to take some of the attention away from him. Or all of it. Or help him disappear into the floor. He knelt there for 35 minutes. He didn't move, even when I reached for my phone and texted you. He nods to Fat Gum. Still wish you'd called, kid. It was late, or early. I didn't want to wake you. Next time, wake me up. Yes, sir. What was he... Oh, right. I watched him, but whatever he was doing didn't have any outward indication. It didn't look like anything, really, except the writing on my hand. It was weird. Before they can ask him weird how, Tamaki pulls out his phone. I tried to take a photo of it, and every single one just, well, they look like this. He hands his phone to Nighteye first. The pro-heroes all look at the gallery of images. They are photos of Tamaki's hand clearly outlined against his thigh and couch, but the strange symbol is unreadable, literally. There are artifacts and distortion running across the image where it sits. It's on every image, no matter the angle. Any image that doesn't show the symbol is fine. And then there are the images of his strange visitor, Deku. Useless isn't what Tamaki would call him, after last night, but maybe he had a reason for that code name. How is this possible? Fatcom asks over Night-Eye's shoulder. If his quirk is manipulating people's quirks, he shouldn't be able to do this. He must have had an accomplice, Eraserhead muses. I looked through the security footage while we were waiting, the detective speaks up. If he did have an accomplice, he didn't enter with this Deku, and he didn't interfere with the security footage. That's clear, but we don't have anything close to a useful image of him. He kept his hood up the whole time and seemed to know to avoid the cameras. Which begs the question, why allow security cameras to record footage but not Sun Eater's phone? I don't know. Tamaki shrinks, feeling like he should have done a better job of this, that any other hero would have managed to get real identification and know what this kid was doing. I didn't see or hear anyone, and he said he came alone, though he could have lied about that. I gave up trying for a bit, then tried to take a video instead, and that just made my phone restart. By the time it was running again, whatever he was doing finished. I could feel my quirk come back. He doesn't mention the overwhelming relief. He doesn't mention how tight his chest had gotten. His weakness in that moment isn't important. The mark on my hand just flaked off, and Deku stood up and asked how I was feeling. I don't like any of this, Eraserhead frowns. He knew where you lived. A friend asked him to see you, someone we don't know and none of us recognize. We've kept the circle who know about the quirk-canceling bullets small, so it's likely he got his information from someone involved. If he's involved with the Shie Hassaikai, this could be an elaborate trap. Tamaki nods. He wants to argue because nothing about the boy who came to him screamed Yakuza thug or villain, but maybe that was entirely the point. He couldn't judge people so quickly, for good or bad, because quirks could be so insidious, and who was he to be any sort of judge of character anyway? He asked me not to tell anyone about it, but I think he knew that was impossible. After that, he just took his bag and left. I checked the apartment, but I didn't find anything. No bugs or tampering, but someone else should probably check in case I missed anything. We'll have our people go through it, Tsukauchi assures. Did he say anything else before leaving? He apologized for coming in so late and mentioned a long walk home. That could have been earnest, or maybe it was meant to deflect attention. And he seemed calmer, less uncertain after he did whatever it was that he did. You're very lucky, Nighteye says, gaze nailing Tamaki to the spot. That could have gone very poorly. Why did you let him in? Because I wouldn't be any more useless dead? Tamaki knows he hadn't been thinking clearly, but who could have, suddenly stripped of their quirk, possibly permanently? He'd felt useless, and as though everyone's teaching had been a waste, that he'd taken valuable space from someone more deserving, that he'd be worrying everyone and they'd be distracted from the real issues. It had been too much, and yet... I let him in because he seemed trustworthy. I know that sounds stupid and dangerous, but he never made me feel threatened, and that was enough to take the risk. I believed him. He considers those words and meets Night-Eye's gaze directly, only for a few seconds before he has to look away, but still. I believed him, and now my quirk is back. Which may or may not be related, Night-Eye points out. What? Eiichiro's been uncharacteristically silent this whole meeting, but that gets blurted out in surprise. But Sun Eater's quirk! If the quirk-canceling bullets have a duration, he might know the duration and have arrived specifically to time it for Sun Eater's quirk to return to buy trust. Night-Eye turns his gaze to Eiichiro, who's in a school uniform, not hero costume. Without anything else to go on, we cannot assume this new player is an ally. We need to treat him as an unknown factor. If we can find him, bringing him in for questioning may give us answers, but we can't be distracted from our core case. Even if he's involved? He may be, and in which case proceeding with our investigation may uncover more. At the moment, that is the best we can do. Without anything else to go on, tracing one possible villain or vigilante will only distract us. We'll need to see if he appears again, Eraserhead agrees. And run his quirk through the database, see if we can get any hits that way. Would you recognize him from a photograph? Sun Eater considers that question, thinks of Deku's messy hair and far too bright green eyes, the scar on his cheek and the freckles that stood out against very pale skin. I think so. Why? From your description, he's young enough to be a student. We can cross-reference his quirk against student records and see if anything comes up that way. Fatgum nods. Good idea. Maybe check for quirks that manipulate cameras as well, in case Nighteye is right and he doesn't have a quirk-changing quirk. There's something else, Tamaki says after the discussion drags forth one more memory. He said he hadn't done this before, but that he'd done something for kids with quirks. The way he talked about coming here, it sounded like there was someone else who thought he could do it and sent him. So if he does have a quirk that manipulates others, there might be record of him using it, especially on minors, says Tsukauchi. That gives us a few options. The detective and I will run through the database, Eraserhead agrees. Until then, everyone else should focus on patrolling and gathering information on the Shie Hassaikai and their movements. They break up after that to patrol, and Tamaki doesn't know if he should wish that he does meet Deku again, or not. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 1 of Complicated Creation. The second half to Chapter 1 will be up next. Personally, I adore this first chapter. I think that the author does an amazing job hooking people in with Chapter 1. I think you just get so pulled into the mysteriousness of it, the ominousness of it, what's going on. You start to learn more information about the bridge, the spirits, and everything that's going on around Deku when he's dealing with the situation. There's just so many little small things dropped that you have to start collecting and understanding and visualizing with it. I really like the fact that Amajiki or Tamaki is being used as the first starting point in this one, getting his quirk back to him. So I think that's really unique. And I don't know, I just love the way the author sets this fic up. So let me know your thoughts and reactions to this so far. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.